Folks are still arriving. Jalasi, Fal Jadavola, Orbea it Haley, Nindeluisi Shannon, Shannon and Anashi and Feta Harum. I'm Shannon MacMullen. Dalloween, Kimadahashu, Smag of Elshinown Conwa. Bahalam Enachog give el par stacking a chian ganyev shaw and a migmagi. Agus a raid ar kuch ektari, va karstis is kolranya getarin vehen. Many of us tonight are gathering on the sacred land of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We acknowledge them as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. Walalioch. Agus Karsanahashi Shaw. The purpose of Ircheli is to create a welcoming and convivial space where we share moments and stories that speak to our connection with Gaelic language, culture, and community. Through telling and listening to stories, we shed light on and invite the stories we want more of in our lives and our communities. By sharing and listening together, we collectively make meaning and imagine new possibilities for Gaelic and culture in our lives. This evening, I'm honored to be co-hosting with MacEachen, with Francis MacEachen. And this season, we're contemplating why Gaelic matters. And in our planning sessions, we've been meeting for a few months, we thought about the Gaelic Nova Scotia symbol. And I hope that we're going to see one of those symbols on our screen in a moment. There we go. Tapalet Huvsi. And in the center of this flag, or the Gaelic Nova Scotia symbol, we see the bratan. The salmon is a symbol of wisdom, and it's formed in the shape of a G for Gaelic and for Gaels. And we have these ripples spreading out from the G, which represent all the aspects of our culture: story, song, dance, customs, music, foodways, kinship history, and so much more. And Tapalet, Susan, why does it all matter? And what meaning can we make in 2023? And how can language and culture contribute to our resilience in these times?
Okay.
So we're going to get right into chit-chatting. In the spirit of a fine Cayley, we would like to say hello to each other, make connections, and begin the conversation. Shortly, we'll break into groups of 3 people to introduce ourselves and give our thoughts on a topic we're going to share in a moment. Kieran Awochen has been busy creating Gaelic speaking breakout rooms already, and it is quite a feat to organize these in a few short minutes. So we're very much hoping that if you had the G in your name at the top of the call, you'll make it into a Gaelic room. And if we can't get you sorted this time around, we'll try again for the second little bit.
It's working right now, but
The second room.
I have another machine here later.
Okay.
I'm just gonna see if I can go to participants and mute all.
Okay. All right.
And I didn't mute myself. Okay, great. So if we, hopefully, I can see he's working hard over there. Hopefully we'll all get in the right rooms this time around. And if not, we'll have a second chance. So once we arrive in our rooms, each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And you may even wonder if you have 3 minutes worth of things to say, and I'm inviting everybody to give it a try. We will send a note out when it's time for the second person to begin sharing, and we'll send another note out when it's time for the third person to begin sharing. And it's possible that some groups may have 2 people or 4 people. And so if that's the case, you'll have about 9 minutes total to share between you all, and maybe you can keep an eye on the clock for yourselves. I'll share the conversation prompts with you for the breakout rooms. And I already see they're copied into the chat box now. And as we split into groups, you'll still be able to see that chat to give you a reminder if you need it. So Shoakun Bachkin, here are the prompts. Introduce yourself and say where you're calling from. And then take us to a moment when you learned something about your own identity or culture by interacting with people who had a different language, culture, or way of life. Shanakate, agus a chiaran, fel na siomri cyn jeshal anisht?
Jeshel.
Oh, Gleva. Okay, Hishin Shu, we're going to join our rooms now and we'll see you back here. Welcome back, everybody. Felawan Rengak.
Hamiawn ach
No.
a chwech mi gyfel Okay. Well, Sal Chada Ash, welcome back, everyone. I think we have mostly everyone back in the room now, and my internet is a little laggy tonight, so I'm going to try and speak slowly and not move too much. So I'm happy to co-host tonight. I'm Frances MacEachen, and really excited about welcoming our guest here. Last summer, the Gaelic Narrative Project supported a few in-person events, and at one special event, we were hosted by the Sky River Trail team in Waikoma First Nation. So we walked their beautiful trail and learned about their history and traditions, medicinal plants. We did some dancing, we shared songs, and we exchanged gifts. So we're hoping to bring a bit of that warmth that we had on that August day back in the room tonight, where we really need it. In Nova Scotia, it's very cold. So we have three special guests that are joining us who were with us that day and shared their language and culture and traditions with us. But before we meet up with them, we want to share a video that Susan Copage asked us to share. So we'll share that and then we'll meet our guests.
Way up, way up, way up, way up, way up, way up, way up. Kinamu nut kopi dem, kinamu kigmona, kinamu don wedi die, kinamu bepe mi die, kinamu don pelgalu. Kinamu squijinu Ormum pyochuwe Kinamu apona madu Nugalimu ledekulu Kinamu wantori Nugalimu kusansuri Kinamu rampelgalu Kinamu squijinu
Beautiful. Weehoo, that was lovely. So that certainly puts a smile on your face. I find that was really beautiful. So hopefully by guests, we're going to see the guests soon. We're going to have Susan and Ella and Eva join me in a hopefully. Oh, there's Ella Nicholas is here. Hi, Ella.
Hi,
Eva.
I'm here with Eva.
Hello.
Hi.
That's good. Yes. Hi. And there's Susan.
Hi.
Super. That was a beautiful video. That was thrilling. It was exciting to watch. So I'm going to have you introduce yourselves in a minute. But Susan, I want you to just tell us a little bit why you wanted to share that video. And maybe give us a little background to it.
Well, the song is written by Jamie Batiste, who's a friend of mine. It's performed by my cousin Eli Sillaboy. And it also features the ECMA new artist who's a fiddler from here in Wagaba named Morgan Tony. So
Yes.
I figured that the song would be appropriate because it does have the fiddle music in it. And the fiddle is also a musical instrument of the Gaels. And it teaches, or the song is talking about teaching the youth, which is exactly what we're trying to do here at Sky River Trail, and what you guys are trying to do with the Gaelic Narrative Program. So I figured that it was the most appropriate song that would be shared.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I think we can put the link in case people want to watch it again.
Sure.
And I noticed there's some dancing there that you were teaching us, Susan, in August. I think that was, Did you? Yeah, so we'll get to that in a minute. But I'd like, maybe if you would all take a little bit of time and introduce yourselves. We'll maybe start with Eva. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi. Nina Galisi, Eva Nicholas, we're on our Debelski, Unamagi, Mi'kma'ki. So what I just basically said is my name is Eva Nicholas. I'm from Wagaba First Nation, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And I was born and raised here. So I work at Sky River Trail, so it's probably a little bit about myself. I'm a cultural interpreter. I'm also an artist. So I usually do like the medicine walks, but we also do other things. So we do all kinds of things at Sky River. So we do a lot of storytelling, teaching, ancient knowledge and stuff like that. So anyways, I'll let Ella go.
Ella,
My
yes.
younger sister, but she's my boss. Wait. Wait, Ella Nicholas.
Hi, Ella.
My name is Ella Nicholas. I'm from Wagama First Nation, and I'm tourism coordinator for Sky River Trail. I work in the background while my interpreters work in the front line. But we do a lot of cultural events at Sky River Trail, and we try to embrace our Mi'kmaq culture as much as we can. We're a nonprofit organization, and just happy to be here.
Thank you, Ella. And Susan.
My name is Susan Copage. I come from Waikagama. I also work at Sky River Trail as a heritage interpreter. And I'm a supervising heritage interpreter. My spirit name is Standing White Bear Woman. And I specialize in the traditional part of the tour at Sky River Trail. So I'm the one that teaches the dancing, the singing, meanings behind the ceremony or whatever it calls for. Yeah. I have wonderful husband.
Thank you.
Together we share 7 children, and we're going on grandbaby number 4.
Oh, very nice. Thanks, Susan. I tonight would love to talk to you about your language, your traditions, and how you learn them and how you keep them going and share them. And I thought maybe let's go back again to you, Susan, and ask you if you could take me to a moment that you in your life when you learned something from an elder. So just take us back to that moment and where you were and who was there and what did you do? And yeah.
Well, thinking back, the furthest memory that I have was I was 6 years old, and my dad was in the kitchen. He was sitting at the table. My mom was probably at bingo or something. But my dad looked at me and he said, "You're Mi'kmaq." I said, "I know, Dad." He goes, "It's time you learned how to be Mi'kmaq." And he got up and taught me how to do the first dance that I ever seen, which was the Gojwa. So I was 6 years old and I'm 49 now. I'll be going on 50 this year. So it's been about 44 years that I've been doing the Gojwa, thanks to my dad. And I've been competing in various competitions and stuff like that. But that one day, I remember it vividly because I never saw my father dance before. And that memory stuck out in my head.
Mhm.
So I was
Yeah.
mimicking steps that he was doing. And then he just let me do it in the middle of the kitchen while he just watched and clapped his hands to the beat of the music. And yeah, so that was my very first experience with anything cultural. And it sparked the interest so severely within me that by the time I ended up growing up, I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could, because I realized that not a lot of people
Mhm.
even knew what the Gojwa was when we were that age.
Mm. And that's the dance they were doing in the video. Is that right?
Yes. And
Right.
it's the Gojwa is a dance that the Mi'kmaq people would do when we had gatherings. So be it a funeral or a birth or a wedding or anything like that, coming of age, whenever our people ended up gathering together, the Gojwa is a Mi'kmaq celebration. So it's a celebration of
Mm.
each other.
Right. How did he learn? Do you know? And what was his name?
I'm sorry? I didn't hear you.
I was wondering how he learned. And I also, okay, I know my connection's not great, but what was his name and how did he learn
Oh, I'm sorry. My
his
father's name was Howard.
traditions?
My father's name was Howard Prosper. And
Mhm.
during centralization, they were trying to move all the native people from various reserves on in Cape Breton and the mainland to either Eskasoni or to Shubenacadie. And there was a man that stayed behind because during that centralization time, some of the adults that stayed behind, and one of them being my grandfather, hid his kids in the woods, and my father being one of them. So during the times that they stayed here, if you went to Eskasoni, you were allowed to practice your tradition. You were allowed to practice your culture, your dances, your songs, you get the drift, right? So when the Indian agents, or the people that stayed behind, the Indian agents would end up coming over to raid their homes, to make sure that there was nothing traditional that the people left behind were doing, that they were adopting the they were acting civilized, I guess. So what they would do is, there's an instrument in our culture that we use. See, we didn't have the drums, right? The drums was a Western influence that ended up coming into our culture at a later time. What we used before that to mimic rhythm, and the only thing that we knew that had rhythm, was the rhythm of the rain. So if you can imagine a tree stump, and you're cutting out the rings, and we would end up taking a rock and then pounding that stick to the point where the sap in the middle of the rings would end up coming apart. So once they came apart and then they were pounded down, it would mimic the sound of the rain instead of the sound of a drum. So when the Indian agents came, because these instruments were so easy to make, they would either be thrown into a fire or they would be put upside down into a bucket beside the fire to look like a piece of kindling. So once the Indian agents would end up coming, somebody would be watching while somebody else was teaching all the kids how to dance. And if they saw the agents coming, they would warn everybody else. Everybody else would go sit down or start knitting or whatever the case. And the Jidamaran would get put away. When the Indian agents came in and looked around, they were satisfied that there was, no shenanigans going on. They would leave. And then as soon as they were far enough out of sight, that Jidamaran would come back out, the kids would get back in the circle, and then the teachings would continue on. And one of those little kids that was in that circle was my dad. And my dad was taught by Andrew Gould. So he was taught the Gould way of dancing. There's 3 main types of dances, or 3 styles of dancing. One was passed on by the Gould family. Another one was passed on by the Kabaddi family, which is from Member 2. And another one was passed on by the Denny family, which was in Eskasoni. And yeah, so I learned 2 ways.
That's quite a story, Sue. That's quite a story. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
that. I was, yeah, I wanted to kind of ask the same thing maybe of you, Eva, because I know you speak Mi'kmaq fluently and you've kept up the language. I'm just wondering if you could speak about someone that really influenced you in terms of your language learning. Could you take us into like the home of an elder that really loved their language and culture that influenced you?
I guess almost all the elders around me spoke Mi'kmaq, and it's in our culture to honor them and listen to their stories. So just to sit down with an elder commonly would be like to have tea and speak the language, and you just kind of sit and learn. And But I would say there was one particular elder, Galolin. She even had a Mi'kmaq name that she preferred, and Galolin translates to Caroline, right?
Mhm.
But her preferred name was Galolin. She was very passionate about the language. Um, so, and she was very concerned it was going extinct. So she kind of dedicated her life to teaching the language. She was well known for making baskets. She was a basket weaver, and she was probably the best basket weaver in all of Mi'kmaq.
Mhm.
And so at the point when she died, passed away, she was in her 90s. She was the eldest elder in our community. And her priority, her main passion was saving the language. And she would just speak it. And if you weren't speaking it, she would remind you, she would ask you, why aren't you speaking your language? You know, that's your mother tongue. And she believed that there was so much knowledge within the language, and she was concerned like of it getting lost. As she said, elders are, she said, the fluent speakers are passing away pretty quickly, and there's going to be a lot of knowledge that goes with their passing. So she went to university, she went to community, she went to anything that she could possibly go, right, to teach the language, to try to get into the universities, to try to bring programs to the community. She was instrumental in developing like a lexicon, and she just dedicated as much time as she could. She was so concerned about the language. And even like I talked to her about like, you know, this was back in 2010, and we talked about the longhouse. And she wanted to know a little bit more about like what we're like. I was asking her if it would be we would have her blessings to build a longhouse. And this is way back then where it was just a thought and dream, right? And she asked one question. The first question she said, can the language be taught there? Right? Yeah, so whatever the topic was, it like she used the language. Like for example, I learned how to make baskets from. And so, and the thing about it, when she taught us how to make a basket, there was a few of us in the group, and she started speaking Mi'kmaq. And well, there was one person that don't even understand Mi'kmaq. There's another person in that same circle that understood it but didn't speak it, and I was the only one learning that could understand her and speak it. And so, but I wasn't nearly as fluent as her, right? And when we started the class, so first of all, she was known to be kind of a strict teacher. If you weave your basket wrong, she would tear it apart and make you start over, right? So right automatically, that was kind of nerve-wracking. So, and then second of all, like when we started class, she said, I'm going to teach this and everything in our language. I'm going to speak nothing but Mi'kmaq. And she was speaking Mi'kmaq to us. And the other girls were just like wide-eyed and whatever, like nervous and whatever. And I was nervous because I was nervous for them, right? Because I had to translate. I was the translator. So, but in the end, like we all made our baskets. None of our baskets got torn apart or whatever. But it was like a challenge though. And ended up being a lot of fun. But yeah, so whatever she did, she was always passionate about the language, and that still sticks to me today. You know, so 'cause she had so much knowledge and she had so many good stories, so many things to teach. And one of the last things she taught me was traditional medicines, right? And it wasn't until like just a few months before she passed away we were having a conversation about traditional medicines, and I wasn't even into traditional medicines then. I was just kind of starting getting to the wild foods and just like different things. And she kind of wants to know a bit more about my dad's background, his mom and his grandma. And she was kind of surprised that my dad's grandmom was actually, she said, we come to full circle. And I said, what do you mean? She says, I did not realize that that was your dad's grandmom. She said, when I was young, I wanted to learn about medicines. Your dad's grandmom took me down Sky River Trail. I mean, she called it Sky River. It wasn't Sky River Trail then. She took me down Sky River and she taught me and Roddy was her husband, about the medicine. So that was her introduction to the medicine
Oh,
from my dad's grandmom. And then she said, we've come full circle. And this is how life
oh,
goes, right? So now I'm teaching you, right?
oh.
So the teachings actually came from our family
Hmm.
and that returned over the years. Like just
That's beautiful. And you talk a lot about medicines and that on the trail last August. I remember you were talking about that. So it's interesting. They learned from it came down from your family, that information, and onto you. That's beautiful.
yeah, and if you even go further back, Sally
Yeah.
Sark, she's known for doing ceremonies, and she was also a basket maker. Everybody in Pictou County know her. She would go house to house selling her baskets, but she was also well known for her medicines. Everybody would go to her. She would have all the medicines, so it's
Hmm.
kind of in our DNA.
That's lovely. Is Ella there? We just have Hi, Ella. Ella, you were telling me one time that you're a little younger than Eva.
Yes.
And it was also your first language. And you also were telling me that you and Susan, you're all children of residential school survivors. And I'm just wondering, when did you first hear about residential schools? Or did your parents talk about that, or how did it impact your life, do you think?
I didn't even know anything about residential schools until I became an adult. And then I didn't know I was even a descendant to a survivor until I was an adult. This is something that our parents didn't talk about. And but when it came out, it kind of started making sense of our reflections of our childhood and like our upbringing, because no, I find that when my mom is a Catholic, but when we went to my father's side where they are survivors, we practice like traditional culture and smudging, and I kind of like that instead of traditional culture. I
Yeah.
wasn't really fond about going to church, and I had nothing against it, but
It's more fun.
yeah, I find it had more healing to it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, it wasn't until I was an adult that I knew about residential schools.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us, Ella, why do you think how is the Sky River Trail like one of the things that Eva mentioned, that you wanted to have a longhouse in the trail, and I think you just got one put up, did you not? Get a longhouse established on the trail just recently?
We do have the shell of the longhouse, and we do have canvas to put up and we have the materials to complete the project, but I think we're gonna wait till spring.
Mm-hmm.
But the longhouse, we want to use it as a place for ceremonies, for healing, for learning, for teaching like our Mi'kmaq ways and culture, and to bring back ceremonies into our communities.
It's beautiful. You know, in the Gaelic community, many people feel that loss of the older people and the language. It's sort of like it's disappeared very quickly. And one thing I really admire, I guess, in your community, you speak a lot about the need for healing, and it's not something that it's really talked about in our community, even though people really grieve that loss, you know, of language and culture. It's not in the same way, I understand, but I'm just wondering that how is healing, and how are your traditions associated with healing, and why is it important to you? I'm not sure who I'm directing that at, whoever might want to feel like they would like to answer that.
Okay. Is the song?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I never turned it
Okay.
off.
How is this healing?
Hmm.
Well, you are right. We do have we do grief. Like we have a lot of grief, and it's not just culture, it's language, it's even the land. Like, so like we're so connected. We've been so connected to the land, and now we're disconnected. We're kind of in the reserves, and we don't have access to the land like our ancestors once did. And I think it's a natural process when we first start realizing our identity, and people start asking questions like, what happened? Like, how did you guys end up on the reserves? Why don't you speak your language? How come you don't live in a teepee? How come you're not dressed like an Indian? Right? Just like when non-native started asking these questions about us, and we didn't have the answers. And then once you start asking those questions and digging into the truth and history, you kind of, it's like death. Like you go through all those different phases, right? You go through anger, you go through grief, you go through acceptance, and then you go like, then you get into healing and everything at first. Just like when I first learned about the residential schools, I was so angry. I was mad. I had like angry thoughts, like I wouldn't dare say now, like, like, why don't we burn the churches kind of thing, right? Once I realized like these acts of, I felt lied to and betrayed all my life. We were tricked. We're forced into another culture, not our ways. And once you realize that you've been lied to all your life, or somebody hasn't told you the truth, there's this grief of your culture, right? And it's very painful. So to offset that grief and to heal, you kind of have to connect back to your culture, connect back to your land. For me, anyways, it's different for everybody. Like somebody might have a different way of healing, right? But what they found about our people, our culture, that land-based teachings, language, music, there's always something that's connected to our culture that heals that person. And I always encourage people to try something else. If you didn't enjoy that, you didn't connect to that, you weren't interested, try something else. And if you keep trying different things, and you usually end up finding what you love and what you connect. So anyway, for me, I just like doing all different. So
Thank you. I guess I would just one last question. And I'm just wondering how we, as Scottish Gaels, that have lived side by side with the Mi'kmaq for generations, how we can help you, with your language and culture and traditions. What can we do to help? or support you? Is there anything that, I suppose there's a lot.
Okay. I think the start is it's like taking part in our events and come learn, we teach, ask questions, just come learn about our culture, our history from our narrative, from our perspective, because for a long time what's been taught has not been from our perspective and narrative.
Mhm.
What
And
the history
yeah,
books and stuff.
what's been in the history books, like a lot of times I find this is why we were so angry, because we were taught a different perspective, and we were not taught from our perspective, right? From our, it was hushed, it was taboo, it was against the law, it was criminalized, kind of, right? So now we're like decolonizing a lot of the system, and this is why we call it like systemic racism and like systemic genocide, because they used the system, the law, and everything, and turned it on us where we weren't even allowed to go fishing off our land. We would need a pass or a permit and off our own land, and we were kind of put on reservations. We weren't allowed to fish. We lost all this access. So like just becoming aware of the history, and maybe even opening up access to the land and waterways, or not necessarily, like I know there's a lot of movement called land back and stuff like that, and that's because we feel deprived of the land, have access to the land. We're on a reservation, everybody has a little yard, and then we go a few miles down the road and you can see a farmer could have so much land, he could have a whole mountain, and it's like enough for like it's equal to our whole community, and we're like, we don't have that, right? And we're not allowed to have that, or we haven't been, right? That hasn't been the norm, but we'd like to access that land, like maybe just get some medicines, or just maybe a welcoming, hey, I got some ash trees in the yard, is there any use for the Mi'kmaq? We got some birch bark trees or whatever, can you use them? I got some porcupines I have a problem with, right? Well, we could use some porcupines, so just things that are connected to our culture. Maybe like come visit our land, and if you have a cultural use for it, that might even be nice. Attend our programs, and or invite us. We're open-minded, and we love to share, and so making those opportunities to share is much appreciated.
Oh, that's all workable. Thank you.
I think one of the things that we could end up doing is sharing the importance of sharing our culture with our children, and coming up with different ways to show that it's not just your culture that's important, it's the respect of other cultures as well. One of the biggest things in our culture is to teach about respect and to have respect for each other. That's who Mi'kmaq people are.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I hate to put an end to this conversation because I think it's so important. And I'm really so grateful for your sharing and your stories. And I hope we can continue to have these conversations and continue to get together and share. And as you say, Susan, bring children together. So thank you both, three of you, so much for coming and talking with us now. We're just going to head back into our breakout rooms, and we'll come back after that. Shannon's going to give us some instruction.
Galeva. Walalioch, Tapaleave, Susan, Eva, Ella, Francis. A Harston Schoolie Shin at the East, out in Buinen Becca. We'll be splitting into groups of 3 again, and we're probably going to have maybe about 6 minutes each, so 18 or so minutes total. And as you enter your rooms, you can decide who will start first. And that person will have 6 minutes to share and reflect on a few questions. And just as we did before, we'll send prompts to remind you that it's time for the second person to start, and then the third person to start. And when I first experienced this reauthoring practice, 6 or 7 minutes sounded like a really long time, and I'd often get stuck about halfway through and think, okay, that's it, I have nothing else, and I'm just going to forfeit my minutes. And if this happens to you, I really encourage you to take a pause and a moment and breathe and just see if there's anything else that might like to be shared. When I was able to pause and carry on, I often heard myself share something I didn't realize I knew or something that surprised me. So I'm inviting your curiosity with yourself and to see what gifts will arise in your sharing. So six-ish minutes each. And if you have fewer or more than 3 people in a room, please share the minutes equally. I guess show up on a question. The questions are, what struck you or surprised you from the conversation with Ella, Eva, and Susan? Is there an image or phrase from their stories that will stay with you? And take me to a moment in your life that you are reminded of after listening to Eva, Ella, and Susan. Agus a chéireann a bheith na seomraíochán Jeshal?
Would like you to answer are what thoughts and images are you leaving with after tonight's session? What questions are you left with? And what action might you be inspired to take? So we'll put those questions in the chat, and we'll just take a few minutes to write down our reflections. Okay, I'll share some. So we have so much to learn from Indigenous cultures like the Mi'kmaq, the importance of respect and care and taking care of the land. The degree of success that the Mi'kmaq have had in bringing their language and culture back is inspiring. The importance of land to Indigenous culture. A vibrant culture of music and dance with an untold amount of stories to discover. I want to hear more. I think this was a wonderful discussion. Our reflection was that we need to participate more in the activities happening around us, particularly getting to the Sky River Trail opportunities. Also, the idea that many of us have been paralyzed from moving with our culture, and to be able to bring more movement and reflection. I see a diverse group of people, a diverse group who are working to revitalize a positive sense of identity, working to restore a sense of pride and identity. I feel fortunate and honored to be able to participate tonight. I continue to learn from Mi'kmaq friends, colleagues, and others. we would like to connect with you all since there's so much in common with what you are doing here, connecting the Irish and the First Nations of the Americas and eventually worldwide. It's lovely. They're going so fast, I can't get them all, but there's a lot of beautiful comments here. I'm touched by the friendship and generosity of the Mi'kmaq. The presentation by the three ladies about their culture was excellent. I'm now interested in visiting their communities to learn more. Yeah. I am MacMac. I am still here. Yes, George. There's a link to Kindred Spirits. Please learn about the Choctaw gift of 1847, the generous gifts of food from the Choctaw to the Irish during the famine. That's true. That's a beautiful, beautiful story. Hy beo hast. A shif beo hast. A hioris. I think it's important to see a culture through its own eyes. Some beautiful, beautiful comments here. So such appreciation to Ella and Eva and Susan for sharing their stories and just their gifts with us too at Sky River Trail in the summer. And I know I see here that many people want to visit. So I hope we continue. It's a very special place. So I think now we're going to introduce the next session. Ian is going to tell us what's on next week for his session.
Thank you, Francis. And I just want to thank Ella and Eva and Susan for your graciousness and your wonderful generosity in being here with us this evening, and for those beautiful words of wisdom. Next week, I'm going to be facilitating a session called Why Making Space for Gaelic Matters. And in this case, we're talking specifically about the language and centering it both individually and within community spaces. And I'm very lucky that I will be joined by Donalda McComb, who is originally from South Uist and for many years was the head teacher at the Glasgow Gaelic School in Glasgow in Scotland. She's recently retired, and she's going to be joining me along with Robert Pringle, who I believe is here this evening, who's from Richmond County in Cape Breton. He's a Gaelic scholar and learner and a community member and leader. And I'm really looking for the conversation we're going to have. And hopefully all of us will be able to leave next week's session with some ideas about how we can either introduce or strengthen or increase the amount of the language that exists in our lives and the places we visit. So hopefully you'll all join me next week. And I will turn it back to Francis. I believe
Thanks,
it's what I'm
Ian.
supposed to do. Yes, I got it right.
Great. Thanks, Ian. And I hope everybody can join us next week. That should be really a wonderful session as well. So I want to just end up by saying thank you, of course, to Ella and Eva and Susan for your participation. Thank you so much. Want to thank the Gaelic Narrative Project team and the tech team tonight, and Gaelic Affairs and How We Thrive, and of course, all our guests who came tonight. Thank you so much for spending the evening with us. And I think to sing us out tonight, we're going to have Susan. Yeah, Susan's going to sing us a song. Are you ready, Susan?
I am not. Give me 1 minute and I'll be right back.
Sure, no problem. So. Mute it. So we have, I just will say that we have this, we're going to be meeting on Friday nights until March 10th, I think is our last evening, and you can register for all of the sessions. And so we have a lot of more good guests and stories. So we'd love to see you back again on Fridays. Okay, Susan,
Oh, she's ready now.
are you all set?
She's not. No, she is. I was ready to talk, Sue. That's your fact.
이간데 이거 이간데 이거 이간데 나 관도라나 해야 해 이거 이간데 이거 이간데 이거 이간데 나 관도라나 해야 해 이거 이간데 이거 이간데 이거 이간데 나 관도라나 해야 해
And that was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks.
I see a lot of people clapping. Thank you.
That is gorgeous. So
That's
grateful. to
actually
you.
oh, thank you. That's actually a woman's song. And the that's a woman's song that's used to close ceremony. So I was very happy to share that with you this evening.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. What a beautiful way to end the evening. Thanks. Well, we'll say Aiche Valav. How do you say good night? I don't know how to say good night in Mi'kmaq, or how you would say good night.
We
But-
usually just say Nemoltis.
Namoltis. And that means
Nemoltis is we'll see you again.
we'll see you again. Namoltis.
Namoltis.
Bishan Kedai.
Nemoltis.
Namoltis.
Maltis.
Aiche Valley.
Oike Valip and Numosha.
En a clave.
Henanetico pain. Take good care, folks.
Good night.
Go
Good
ahead
night.
now.
One thing,
Tablet.
Brandy.
Thank
I
you,
want
George. Thank you so
Gaelic.
much.
Tapaleaf Sunshine.